sorry, a star seed. I am also one. I am sorry, Nene, that your experience just sounds, oh my God, awful. Mine is a little different. I don't remember, like, people have said that when you become a star seed, you sign a contract, and some people remember it, some people don't. I don't remember it, but I do. I went to an event, like an Awaken Expo, and I sat with someone, and they told me that I am a star seed from a different planet, a different universe, and I looked it up, and it made sense, and I was just like, oh my God. So um, I do believe too that I was sent here to make humanity better. I really do.
You, Lori.
I'm a big believer in what Nini's saying.
I appreciate that. And the fact that people don't remember, it's like I appreciate that too, because that's, people have, I'm a very big believer in things like faith and trust. And the contingency, to put it in a logical explanation, faith and trust is believing in something that your inner knowing knows, even if logic can never ever back it up. Because if logic could back it up, there's no faith and trust. It's just, okay, it's obvious, you see it. But if you don't see it and you still believe it because your inner knowing knows, even though your logic does not, that's how the ego learns to be subservient to a higher power. So I appreciate that in you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nini. Okay, so we're going to back up a moment now. So based on that energy that's coming through, I'm going to let you ask a new question to either Beth, Becky, or Kylea. And I want to welcome Ray. Ray, thank you for joining us tonight. Let you say hi. Hi. I'll let you listen to this conversation, Ray, and then when we're finished and complete the circle of this part of it, what I'll have you do is we'll have you check in with the rest of us before we go on to the next portion, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Okay, Nini. So your question, so you can ask Beth, Kylea, or Becky a question after you have a chance to catch up with everything that you just offered our circle here just now.
Cool. Cool. Very cool. So I have a question for, I think it was Becky.
Okay.
When you first jumped on, you started to mention how you were showing up, and it struck me as very curious. Just and I don't mean this to be like to delve into something that's too vulnerable, but you had mentioned certain feelings that it almost sounded like you were like, oh, I don't really want to focus on that. But from the moment that was said, I am curious, like, if there's something you want to share about yourself. This is, I guess, I don't want to speak for Michael, but I think this is an open space, and I'm so curious about this part of yourself that I felt started to come, and then you said, oh, but I don't really want to share. So if you don't want to, I totally get it, but that struck me as curious. So if you don't want to answer it, feel free to just like toss it out the window, but I am curious.
Thanks for being curious and caring. But yeah, I don't want to divert from our discussion tonight or like put the focus on it. It's really like a complicated culmination of different things like going on. So it would take like a while to even explain. I don't even know how I would begin, honestly. So
yeah, and thank you, Becky. Part of this space tonight, especially in the appreciation conversation, is that diversion is a good thing, and it is encouraged. But I understand. I understand. Maybe instead of answering that question, which might be time consuming and maybe a little bit past the boundary of vulnerability, what would you like us to know about you that that you're really passionate about, that you really want to be spending your time focusing on, and what you really want to do?
Well, I mean, I'm passionate about, I have a lot of different passions, but I really want to do something that's helpful to people and society in general. And I'm really passionate about improving myself as well, personal growth. Really interested in spirituality. So.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to reflect back on that and then ask either Beth or Kylia a question of your choice. But first, we're going to open it up about, what's coming up for us in response to you. One of the things I want to appreciate about you, and that I think everybody in this circle should know about, is that you are an excellent writer, and you are very dedicated and very, very, very determined, because you showed up for our when we did our Deep Democracy group 2 years ago. Even though you couldn't be there in person, you showed up on Zoom and online. And I really admire and I appreciate your dedication. And I would really encourage everyone in this circle as well to to kind of look at your writing as well too, because you are a very prolific writer. So that's something I wanted to reflect back about what I appreciate about you.
Thanks.
I appreciate your vulnerability and willing to be vulnerable, and also just the fact that you could have chosen to divert, and I don't think anybody would have mind, but just the kind of like awareness and consciousness and understanding of like what's happening in this moment, and like what is I kind of try like supposed to be sort of the focus, and just sort of like the ability to be like, right now I think this is where the priority of the energy lies, instead of like moving on to this thing. That's just a skill that can be really, really beneficial for lots of people, and it's like a really, really like amazing skill to see modeled. So thank you.
Becky, I noticed that you put a boundary down in the beginning that said, I'm having this stress and anxiety, but I don't want to talk about it today. And Nini, no problem that you're curious and you wanted to bring that up. But Becky, I appreciate that you stated your boundary one more time and said, I don't want to talk about this today. That is absolutely okay and good for you. That's what I say. So that's what I appreciate.
All right. Any other reflections back for Becky? Go ahead, Laurie. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Maybe if I ask to unmute, maybe the button comes up for her.
Okay.
There
Sorry.
you go.
Sorry. I just wanted to say it's what I appreciate is that you obviously have other things going on, but you still came here and you still showed up, even with whatever it is that's going on that you're not talking about. You still came here to be part of this, and that must be so hard to do. So I appreciate that you showed up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Laurie, too. And yeah, Becky, you're our you're our connection also with time banking over in Phoenixville. So one of the things that I'm talking about with them is is that this is kind of like a co-production committee, and with your presence here, you're bringing that local interest in that community. So, and I know that you're very dedicated to the community as well. So I'm going to invite you now, Becky, to ask a question of either Kylia or Beth of your choice.
I'm gonna ask Kylia. What are your beliefs?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I was raised evangelical Christian, and in about 2017, I diverted deeply from that. It was in some ways a big diversion, and in others it wasn't surprising. I knew that I came here for a very specific reason, and that I had a very specific purpose. And from the time I was a little kid, there was just things that I could see and hear and understand, and just thoughts that I had that nobody else seemed to share but me. And so it it was something I had, like, obviously I had to keep a secret, because like my grandparents who raised me were not okay with that. And so in my 2017 sort of like diversion, that was when I figured out, I guess, who I really, really was. Um, so for me, my belief system, it's a combination of like paganism and the occult meets like esotericism with like a little bit of like certain, I guess you could say, like some like religious aspects, meets astrology, meets psychiatry. If you were to put all of that sort of together in one little ball, that sort of is me, where I kind of I some of my like opinions and thoughts on certain things, especially within like human society, are very different and kind of go against the grain for most people. Um, and I do work and connect with beings and things and situations that is very either outside the norm or sometimes even downright scary, for others, not necessarily myself. And so, yeah, it's like a big question for me, because it's one of those things where I like to share, but I'm also hesitant to share, because I never know what the reception is going to be when I like sort of fully dive in and divulge to like everything I guess my practice entails. So thanks for asking.
So I'm going to let you catch up with that. And I think Beth is the last one in this exercise that will start to close out the circle. But I would like to invite reflections, questions on what Kylie just said. I appreciate that you're able to jump in here, not knowing anyone, and being able to state straight out, where you've been, and all of your interests, which can be very, can be off-putting and controversial to some. So I really appreciate the bravery and the vulnerability it takes to to just put that right out there.
Kylie, when you hear what I have to say about my beliefs, you'll find I am pretty much the most traditional person here. But I can appreciate the idea that I also feel differently than a lot of people about some things, and I have definitely gotten some negative feedback, to put it kindly, about things that I don't know. They just make sense to me. And other people have downvoted me on social media. So, oh well, what are you gonna do? So, I am curious, and if you don't want to say, that's all right too. But I'm curious. Can you name an example of something that you feel like other people just don't get?
So I guess the two biggest ones for me. So I feel like my purpose here, I've been called to help the healers. So the people that are out supposed to make humanity better, heal humanity, deal with humanity. My job is basically being their healer and their caretaker. That's my role. I'm not necessarily here for humanity. That's not really my thing. I love humanity, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here for the people that are here for humanity. And within that, so one of the things that I do is I'm a God phone. So I work with deities, angels, you name it, they come. I connect them to who they need to be connected to. I support them with what they need support with. The other side is this world can't exist without contrast. Contrast is what teaches us what we do want versus what we don't, right? Contrast is what shows us where our values lie, what's important to us, where our hearts are. So I work with contrast beings. A lot of humanity labels them as like demons, shadow people, those type of things. It's for me, in my experience, it is not that simple. And a lot of what is attributed to these beings is very incorrect, but I work with them. I have relationships, I have history, I have past life experiences, all of these things with those beings, with what I would consider like celestial beings, starseed stuff, like a little bit of it all has been my experience. And for a lot of people, especially like the contrast stuff, is very like, so yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Is it okay if I say something?
Go for it. Go for it, Nini.
So I can really appreciate, Kylia, what you're saying about you see something and nobody gets it, because that was like my whole life until I discovered the online world.
Mhm.
And it was, wow, all the people that get me are inside the computer. Like, what? So I can really appreciate just what it means. And that's like, everything that we thought we knew about somebody is so wrong. And it's like all the things they tell me is a lie because they just don't understand. And it's not, I've discovered it's not that humanity is trying to be malevolent. It's
Mhm.
more, it's just primitive. It's just very, very primitive. And I can relate with what you're saying. I've tried to help humanity also. And it's like, they don't care. They just say it in plain, they don't care. They don't want to get better. It's like, I can relate also with the idea of helping those who want to help humanity. I never put it in those types of words, but that makes a lot of sense. And like what you're saying, this seems like so logical to me. It's like, well, why don't people get this? This is like, 1+1 is too simple. So I'm glad that you're sharing with us, and I'm glad that you said that, because I think probably in this circle, everybody will probably agree and resonate with what you're saying, because it just makes sense. If that makes sense.
Mhm. Thank you.
Great. So, Kylie, I'm going to let you catch up with all of this, what you just
Mhm.
said, all of the feedback, and I'm going to have you ask Beth a question.
So you stated that your beliefs are very traditional. I'm curious about what those are. I'm also really curious about like what are the things that people have like negatively responded to in terms of like those beliefs.
Thank you, Kylia. I'll do as you did and start at the beginning. I grew up Catholic. I got out right after I was confirmed because I hated being Catholic. Nothing against anybody who's Catholic. Just not my thing. I wasn't big on being told I'm going to hell. And I was even less big on the idea of being bored to death. So, flash forward 25 years of being unchurched completely, pretty much. My 5-year-old son at the time was ready to go to school, and I felt it was time for him to get a religious education. So I landed myself in the United Church of Christ. Fast forward to 2015, so 15-ish years later, I felt a call to go into ministry. I was in the seminary at the time, as it happens, and I say my beliefs are traditional because I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I've always believed in God. And my passion is teaching people how to be disciples and how to have a talking and listening relationship with God, which that's probably my number one. That's really different approach. In the United Church of Christ, we had an advertising slogan years ago that said, "God is still speaking," and a lot of us still use it. But what happens is God might still be speaking, but if we're not listening, what good does that do? And that's what I tell my people. I talk about it pretty much every single week because I'm pretty sure it's a foreign concept for a lot of them. So So that's one. But I don't get a lot of flack on that. But I will give you an example of what I had some flack on the other day. I was on Reddit and somebody had said something about some homeless lady asked me to bring her baby diapers or something, and I didn't do it, and I felt so guilty, and so somebody said something about giving money to the homeless is a gift, and something. And I said, and this is where I got into trouble. I said, I don't always see it as a gift, because if that person happens to have an addiction, they're going to spend their money on booze and drugs. And therefore, I'm not helping them by giving them money. So for me, I don't give money to homeless people. I'll give them a meal. And actually, that's what I said. The alternative is, why don't you offer them a meal and then actually sit with them and talk with them and remember that they're human beings? Ooh, I got downvoted. I got downvoted. Uh, uh oh, it was a little vicious. The one guy in particular was really giving me a hard time, saying, well, it's a gift and they have the right to spend it any way they want. And I said, well, okay, for you, you do you, but for me, I don't want to spend my hard-earned money possibly harming someone. I don't want to do that. And actually I was at a dinner at my church the other night, and it's a long story, but I met a lady there who works with homeless folks, and I believed I was right and everything, but I wanted a little validation. So I said to her, I told her the story, and she goes, oh, Beth, you were absolutely right. You do not give money to these folks. A lot of the homeless folks have mental health issues and or addiction issues, and you are absolutely right. Do not give your hard-earned money to those folks. You are not helping them. But man, I got downvoted big time. To me, it just makes sense. I don't want to and can't help anyone that way. I mean, you feel bad in a way, but what I would really love to see is the system that created the homelessness to be addressed, rather than just hand them cash and let them continue panhandling. I mean, what kind of a life is that? This is our brother and sister in Christ. I was in my Bible study today, and Jesus talks about whenever you accept a little child, who back then was a nothing. Children were nothing in Jesus's day. When you accept this child, you are accepting me, and therefore you are accepting God. So for us today, homeless folks with mental illness, and in some cases people of color, people who are food insecure, the LGBT community, these are the folks we need to be standing up for and helping, because this is who Jesus would be helping if Jesus were back in the flesh, if you will. And we are the body of Christ. And I want people to see each other's humanity and actually help. And that requires getting closer. It's easy for us to just throw our money. That's easy. But and I've been in situations where, we're going to feed the homeless and that, but we all hang back in the kitchen. I don't, because I've learned to go out and actually, go and talk to them and say hi, but it's hard. I get that. It's hard. But if we don't sit with these folks and eat with them, how do we ever get to know their humanity? That's really hard. So yeah, can anybody have an idea why I might get downvoted on Reddit?
Actually, yes. So I guess as we get to know each other, one of the things that you'll learn about me is I have this ability, I think it's because of what I've been called to do, where I can kind of jump into the mind of anyone and sort of see their perspective and understand why they might think the way they do, where they're coming from with their thinking, even into the minds of people that most people wouldn't even want to try to venture into. I can go there. And so for me, what you just said is 100% how I operate. It's my belief system. I do not give the homeless money. I will go buy you a meal. I will go buy you a coat. I will do any of that. I'll just sit and have a conversation with you if that's what you'd like, but I'm not giving you money. because I can't guarantee that I'm not hurting you, that I might not give you money and then I might see you overdosed 5 minutes later somewhere because I gave you that money. I'm not risking that.
I can't do that.
But in the mind of a lot of people on Reddit, especially, some people just like controversy. So they just like to go back and forth. They enjoy the argument, they enjoy the drama, and it makes them feel better to put somebody down and be more superior. For others, there's this belief in freedom and individual autonomy. And it's well meaning in the respect of when we live in a capitalist society, a lot of that gets taken away, even for, those of us that are, not struggling or not in a moment of crisis. We don't really have a lot of free choice in a lot of ways to make our own choices and live our lives fully independent and autonomous for ourselves. And so there's a lot of people on Reddit who strongly believe in that, and they feel like this idea of deciding for another person what is the best thing for them is just another cog in the sort of oppressive regime, in this oppressive capitalist way. And so they are crusading for a noble cause, but like forgetting the context of who you're talking about, what demographic you're dealing with, what struggles and crises these people might be facing. And a lot of times too, some of these people have never dealt with mental health issues. They don't know, like, as someone who has diagnosed mental health issues, there were many times where giving me money was the worst thing you could have done for me. Like, that was, and I've never experienced homelessness. I've always been lucky enough to sort of been able to maintain myself to a degree, but there's many times where money was like the worst thing, because I wasn't going to use it for what I needed to. I was going to use it for whatever made me feel better in the moment. And so a lot of times in these places like Reddit, a lot of times, a lot of the people that are saying stuff don't know what it's like to struggle mentally and to not have the cognitive ability to make healthy choices, or to be caught in the cycle of addiction and those things. So they think that they're crusading for this person's autonomy and rights, and we don't get to decide what's best for somebody else. And not looking at the perspective of, like, I'm not deciding what's best for them. I'm saying I'm not comfortable with potentially enabling harm. But I'm also not going to turn myself away from someone who's asking for connection and asking to be seen as a person. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Kylie. I just want to back up a moment. So I want to also open up the floor up to anyone who wants to reflect back what they heard Beth say about what they appreciated, and any clarifying questions. But I also want to say, Beth, as someone who once was homeless, and I also listened to a man speak about that yesterday as well too, who spent 15 years being homeless. Thank you for seeing us as people. Thank you for seeing us, as a human being. So I really appreciated that from what you offered. So I'll open that up.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. So as I open the floor up to anyone else who would like to reflect back what they heard or ask a question, I'd like you to think of a question you'd like to ask me, and then I'll respond and bring Ray into our circle. So floor is open to anyone else.
Yeah, I did want to say, like, I love when you were talking about, both things. It sounded like the first part when you talked about, like, having a connection with God. I call that God channeling. And I talk to God all the time. It can be done in traditional prayer. It can be done in your own words, but literally, like, I call it instant access to the quantum field. I ask a question, I get a direct answer. And when conversation went to being able to see into the minds of, the people who were downvoting you, like when you were talking, I was getting this intuitive hits off, because I can feel it's like, no, this is very self-righteous. People think they're at a good cause, and instead of stopping and saying, okay, what's of highest service for these people, for these homeless people, and you hit it on the head, spend time with them, make them feel like they have a life, make them feel like they're worth it. Okay, yeah, it's you want to sit there and throw money that enables the bad behavior. It's like, give like one more dance with Mary Jane to kill the pain kind of a thing. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, how about taking some time, letting the person talk, hearing their story, because a lot of people really have incredible stories too. It's just they get so bogged down by the overstimulation, they have to numb themselves with who knows what. So it's like, why someone would want to thumb you down? probably because they're super self-righteous. They don't want to take the responsibility of actually doing the work. They just want to say, oh, I'm a noble person. Let's give them some money and then I don't have to do the work and we're all good, right? And they can't own. That's why I'm so big on like emotional intelligence and self-responsibility, because, you know, that's what you're doing, is you're wanting to actually say, hey, how can I be of service to you? As opposed to, yeah, let's just like give myself a really good name, bolster my ego a little bit, and yeah, I help them. Right. And they can't own that guilt, so they thumbs you down instead. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, on the money. Absolutely on the money. Yeah. Thank you, Nini.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else like to offer a reflection or a question for Beth? All right, Beth, I'll let you catch up with all of that, you know, all of that response and what you had offered. And we'll close this conversation out by you asking me a question, which I'll respond to, and then I'm going to bring Ray in.
Okay. If I may ask, Mike, I did not know that you were homeless at one point. Can you tell me how you got your way back?
Certainly. Basically by the love, the love of the people in my life. It, what this conversation is reminding me of is that there was a time where I was fairly financially independent. I had done very well with investments, and I also had received a gift from, you know, from my ex-wife's parents. And what happened was I tried to invest in myself in a business, and you know, that did not work out. And I ended up getting divorced, and I was working as a personal trainer for only $6 an hour, $6 a session. And you know, for whatever reason, because I do, you know, I think I do intimidate people. I think I do have an understanding of what's going on. I couldn't really get a job that was above, you know, above where I was at. So I was living, you know, it's a lot of the times in my car with, with my girlfriend at the time, who eventually became my wife. And yeah, and also just showering at the gym that I worked at. And you know, eventually, you know, it wasn't anything that I did, or that I came, you know, I didn't really, I honestly really didn't pull myself out of it. It was just because I was still, I would eventually get a better job, but I was basically living, living with, with my wife, and she took care of me. And you know, it kind of really put in perspective what a man was supposed to be, and what, what was expected of me. So so it wasn't really anything I did to pull myself out of it. I owe everything to, really to my wife and to my family for being there whenever I needed them. And a lot of the time, the reason why I did sleep in my car, or the reason why I did not have a bed to go to, was more a personal choice, because I was so ashamed. I was really ashamed that there was a point in my life where I did have it all together, and I did. I was given money. Some of it was given, some of it was from wise investing. But there was a lot of guilt that I couldn't make things work with a business that I really wanted to pursue, and at the time the world wasn't ready for it. So yeah, so I basically got out of it, not by my own, you know, not by myself, but by the love and the support of those who cared about me. So yeah,
Wow, thank you.
yeah. All right, Ray, let's bring you into the circle. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to see you. So I just wanted to, rather than do the normal, how are you arriving? What are you bringing? Let me just ask you, based on what you heard so far, what is your impressions? what's alive for you in your world as you're entering with us tonight?
Well, I'm happy to be here. And just it's really delightful for me to be able to hear what's been happening and kind of see you all, some of you for the first time, and some of you I think I recognize from other conversations. But yeah, I'm just happy to be listening. This particular topic, I think Michael and Kaylee are the only ones who know like how pertinent that is to me. And I do have thoughts about it. If I don't know if you're asking for that, but
Sure. Let's ask you the question that we started this line of conversation with, and that is, what are your spiritual beliefs, and how have they served you?
Well, my spiritual beliefs at this time um, are pretty much summarized in the idea that everything is interconnected, and that the separations that we perceive in this planetary realm are an illusion, and they're not actually real. So that ultimately, if you were to take away the stories and the atoms and all the things that separate us on a physical level, we are all expressions of God, what people would call God, or the universe, or the divine, or spirit, whatever you want to call it. And I think that our religions and our ideologies and beliefs are all just ways to try to access that truth. And I think that diversity is beautiful. So all the different ways of accessing that, I've always been fascinated by. I've always loved religion in a certain way. And Kylia knows I was raised very evangelical Christian and made my way out of that. It was a process, and it also included discovering the truth and beauty in other traditions along the way, and just opening my mind up to different ways of looking at things.